Got that. Patrick, Christy.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Getting all the faces pulled up here.
Excellent.
Good evening. Hi, Christy. Long time no see. I just saw you on Saturday over at Brugger's.
Yes, we had an awesome day out there.
Yeah, God, from Brugger's Bog to Echo Lake and these home life, if you can, you're allowed that, I guess.
Oh yes, I have enough time. This remote work lends a lot to life.
I bet. Yeah. We were just saying one of our board members is just starting to go downtown to her office and using the light rail. So we're kind of anxious to see. Had a couple people.
21st century.
Yeah.
Very
It's all
exciting.
been a great experience. They said people I've talked to have gone down to stop off like on Roosevelt to go to a breakfast someplace, and they hop back on, go down to Wing-Luke Museum and get off in the International District and then head back. They said it hasn't really been too crowded, but I think they're probably going to during like on weekend versus commuter time. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Marla.
Our Echo Lake steward down there. And your wife. Hi.
Claudia. Oh, I should put
Claudia. Hi, everybody. Claudia.
I rode the, no, I didn't. I went down to Northgate Station today, and it's, it's a beautiful station. And then there's a walkway across I-5 there. I went on that walk. So it's
Nice.
just, and then the new Kraken community iceplex is
Yeah.
open. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
You know what, really, and I I always bring this up. I may as well get it over with. You go into the Kraken facility where the Bon Marché was. Beautiful, beautiful place. 3 ice rinks, a little Starbucks, a little store, gift shop, 2 extensive restrooms. Each one, no doors, go in. So, and I mean, no swinging. Anyway, so then we go over to this, and it cost, what it costs, $1 billion. I don't know, an unimaginable amount of money. And then I went over 2 blocks to the beautiful light rail station with that bridge that goes all the way over to North Seattle, and levels and floor of beautiful. I wrote, and so I looked for the restroom, and there is one, and there is, so the third day I'm sorry, this story might bore you. The third day I went in, there was no toilet paper. So I wrote Sound Transit, hey, I've seen that we've got a better toilet paper dispenser and a lot of loos. This one is bad, get rid of it. So I went back 4 days later, and they had replaced the toilet paper.
Whoa, you're the expert.
Putting in a big one, but they locked the door. They locked
How about that? You're the expert.
There is one men's toilet, one women's toilet, and they locked the door. But then I finally figured out you have to ask the security guard. So you wander around, get the security guard, then he'll come up. She came up and unlocked the door, let me in, and then so there's a man and a women's. But it just struck me, why?
Yeah, complicated.
Why is it that a business can open up with skating? And have extensive restrooms and a station, which is going to handle, I think, a lot more people, all scattered, not all at once, but it could. Sure. Why is restrooms not a problem, or what's going on here? That's just strikes me.
Get it figured out.
It must be private industry, and I mean, they're better at this. They know what people need, and for some reason, the government's too cheap in this regard. So.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. They'll get enough people like you and the rest of us. They'll tell them how to do it. I know my neighbors have some grandkids that are already taking ice skating lessons there, so that's pretty cool. We're real lucky to get it going. Looking forward to coming out here too, a little bit further north. Well, we're just catching up on our friends here at the neighborhood. So if you're just joining us, I'm on an iPad, so I'm not able to see all of our viewers. I've got let's see, 12 people on the screen, I guess, so far. See Christy Lovelace, and then John Featherstone, and then probably a few others. I've asked some of our board members to let me know if there's people that I'm not viewing. I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. We have an agenda tonight. We're fairly informal, but we try to stick to it so that everyone can get out on time. We've got people that have to get up and go to work in the morning. Some have to finish writing the newspaper, the Shoreline Area News, and they're up until wee hours of the morning when I'm going to bed, when I'm getting up. We have board members here tonight, Diane Hetrick, who does the Shoreline Area News. Myself is Marla Tulio, been a board member for a couple of years. Gidget Terpstra and her husband Dennis are here tonight with us, along with Larry and Jean Monger, who's the board member, and Kathy Goodrich. And then probably just skedaddled off the light rail, I'm assuming. Diane Lindberg, she just started going back to work downtown a few days a week. And then we have Dale Linden, who'll be probably joining us here a little bit later. He'll be pulling into his driveway after his drive over from the east side.
Marla, he's here.
He is here. Oh, great.
He's here.
Yeah, there's one person on the screen down below. I can't see that he sneaks in. Dale Linden, will be hearing from him soon. He's going to have to leave a little early because he's got a big project that's due tomorrow. So we'll start off with him. Did I get everybody, I think, on the
Oh,
board?
Jay.
Hey,
Yeah, great. So we're going to go ahead and start the business section of the meeting, and we'll try to get that all done by 7:30. Then we have some people waiting on the side that are our guest speakers tonight for to talk about the health of Echo Lake and our watersheds and maybe some of the programs that they offer through surface water from the city of Shoreline. So Dale, I can't see you, but I know you're there. I hear a rumor. Do you want to give us a quick little update on our treasurer's report, even though we haven't had a lot of income coming in, but if you
Yeah,
want to
we've
share
not.
what you have.
I'm going to share my screen, and I'm on a smaller machine, so. Share. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes. Looks good.
There we go. So it's labeled September because the book's closed for September. We're not closed for October yet. But this is basically the expenses. We had expenses for our web domain, and we had no income in September. So we have a grand total of 502.63. Well, we're hearing some weird stuff. Anyway, so we have 230 in checking, 46 in savings, and 220 in petty cash, and that's where we are, 502.63. We did have someone donate $100
The meeting.
in October.
I don't know
So that'll
how.
show up on the next expense report, or the next treasury report, sorry. So anyway, somebody's got talking in the background, if they could put it on mute. But that's where we are. So
Okay.
let me stop sharing. If anyone has a question. Now, I do have a more comprehensive for the year if you really want to see it. But this year, because we've had very little income, we've gone from 678 down to 502. And I expect that trend to kind of continue. And we can talk about, we'll probably talk about any projects coming up next month, because at this point we don't have anything solidified. But
Okay.
That's it. I'll stop
Great.
sharing.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Dale. Good luck with the rest of your evening, getting your project done. And tomorrow.
Well, I'll still talk about next month's meeting too, when we get into the agenda. So
Oh, do you have to,
follow the agenda. We're fine.
okay, all right. Okay. Yeah, Dale will be hosting the meeting that we have next month in November. So let's see, next we have our Council of Neighborhoods report that Gidget Terpstra was able to go to. I know they're talking about maybe sometimes in the next couple of months returning to City Hall. So we have an opportunity for this particular meeting of neighborhoods to either be done through Zoom, or those of us that have given the proof of vaccination, we may even try to start doing some at City Hall. Is that right, Gidget?
I think they're going to try to do a hybrid
Yeah.
initially to see how it goes. They're hoping to open, but it all depends upon the
Right.
figures. So I did attend the October 6th Council of Neighborhood meeting, and the Council of Neighborhoods consists of 14 neighborhoods in Shoreline that get together monthly to share information. And so Shoreline Council member Betsy Robertson spoke first. The council will again be discussing Prop 1. It failed due to a lack of validation last time, but it's back on the agenda and they will be talking about that. There is a new street racing ordinance addressing street racing in Shoreline. We now have a no racing zone with additional consequences, including arrest and vehicular impoundment. And they're targeting 15th, Aurora, and Richmond Beach Road. The city of Shoreline contracts with King County for its police services. The state legislature, as you probably have heard, has recently passed about 100 new reforms for law enforcement. And there have been some unintended consequences, so the legislature will be providing more clarity for the police. The police currently have questions, including the Shoreline police, have questions about their role in doing protective work, calls for service, especially involving mental health crises, and use of physical force if there is probable cause for arrest, not reasonable suspicions. And there is a new law regarding calls on drug possession, including that arrest can be made on the third call. So that's something new. She talked about the multifamily tax exemption, which we have heard about before. Since 2007, 12 buildings have enrolled in the program with 378 affordable units, plus 8 buildings are coming online. That will give us a total of 670 affordable units in Shoreline. The council wants to encourage more construction. They are removing a sunset clause to the tax exemption, and also in the station areas for the north and south stations, the property exemption goes from 12 years to 20 years. And the council has acknowledged that there is need for infrastructure improvements for new construction. And the council is talking about needing more single-family affordable housing. So next, Juniper Nami, the Sound Transit Project Manager for the City of Shoreline, spoke since Mai Wen had a conflict and couldn't speak that evening. Sound Transit 3 projects have had some delays due to COVID. The 185th station target date is summer of 2022. And the garage, 2020.
No,
Well, the target.
4. It's 4.
Well, I guess we have a little disagreement here.
Dennis is helping.
And the project is scheduled for completion the summer of 2023, with the operation starting in the summer of 2024.
Yeah.
The 195th pedestrian bridge was closed due to them having to relocate utilities. There's a stairway by the 195th pedestrian bridge, but that will not be for public use. So when you see that stairway, that is not for everyone to use. WASDOT owns the 195th pedestrian bridge, but the city currently does not plan on any improvements to that bridge. Regarding areas around the 185th Street Bridge, the underground utilities must be moved by the utility companies. That is not something the city does. 5th Street is scheduled to reopen about November 1st, but that may be extended. And then the drainage system on 5th needs to be redone because the rebar was not designed correctly. On 8th, a new stormwater system was installed, but then a sinkhole appeared at 189th. So all that needs to be dug out and done correctly. 8th should be open in late 2022. Yvonne Rivera Martinez of Sound Transit provided updates on the SR 422 145th bus rapid transit. That new transit service will run from Bothell to the 148 South Shoreline station. And it will involve Ridgecrest, North City, and the Ballinger neighborhood areas. Evidently, it affects a lot of trees, so that they will be replanting to the trees. And they said that they will recheck those trees in 3 years to be sure they're okay. The board has been working with the affected neighborhoods as well as one-to-one with individual homeowners about the improvements and cutouts to the streets in front of their properties. Other city projects include the 145th Street interchange, and you may have seen that on the city website. The 148th Street Bridge project. $2 million has been allocated by Sound Transit for Fifth Avenue sidewalks at Northeast 175th to 182nd. And the city will be doing that construction, even though Sound Transit has allocated $2 million for that work. City Light will be doing the below ground utility work on 185th, which I thought was kind of an interesting comment because I've seen new poles on 185th. So I don't quite understand that, but and then for the trails along the rail project, 10 blocks will be done by Sound Transit. So that's my report.
Great. Thank you, Gidget and Dennis. Yeah, those are always such interesting, so many things to talk about in that short amount of time when we meet every month with all the different, some of the lead people from the different neighborhoods. So Dale, if you're still there, do you want to give us a little bit of a preview of what's to come next month at our November meeting? We have, let's see, it's on the third Tuesday of the month. Yeah, November 16th.
Yep, November 16th. It's going to be a very scintillating topic, business in Shoreline. We've invited the president of the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce to speak to us about the kind of the state of business and what they know about existing businesses and new businesses and things like that. And then we've invited two of the old family businesses to come and talk about the history of their facilities here in Shoreline. Right now, Dunn Lumber has accepted and is scheduled, and also asked Sky Nursery. So, you know, these are both businesses in our neighborhood and businesses that I think we all love and patronize or patronize, not patronize, not patronize. So it's interesting how the family business got started, why they ended up in Shoreline, why they continue to stay in Shoreline and stuff like that. So hopefully Sky Nursery will also accept. And if not, we've got a couple other family businesses in the city, maybe not necessarily in our neighborhood. But so about businesses, and, you know, business is the lifeblood of a city. And so please tell your friends and neighbors, and we'll learn about business in Shoreline on the 16th of November.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dale. That's a kind of a first topic for us. And as far as I know, we haven't had anything quite like that with our local businesses coming and giving a kind of a catch up and get to know us. Good luck with your rest of your evening, Dale. And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you later. You're going to head out and get your project done for work.
Yep.
All righty. Yeah, the business is kind of all dependent on how the development's going to go through here. So we have a couple other, another 10 minutes, I guess, about 10 more minutes. Jean, you do have your hand up. I see you want to add some more comments about some things going on.
That's what Larry said too. I was waving goodbye to Dale.
Oh, you were waiting. Sure. All righty. Yeah, I don't know if any other board members have anything. I have some catch up on a few projects we've been doing here in the neighborhood, so I can fill in some time before we have our surface water team join us. And I think all three of them are here. I can tell. That's wonderful. Be able to join us. As far as things going on in the Echo Lake neighborhood, the last couple of weeks and months, now we're transitioning into fall. We have a neighborhood mini grant that we received this year for about $3,500 to help add some more artwork to the Densmore pathway that's located here, kind of over on the west side of Echo Lake neighborhood on 188th, between Ashworth and Densmore Avenues. If you haven't had a chance to walk through there yet, take a time to do that. It's kind of a shortcut way to get over to Sky Nursery or over to Aurora. Some people like to go through there because it's a little bit quieter, safer at this point in time than 185th. Hopefully in the future, 185th will have a new street and some new sidewalks as the development goes through, but there's a lot of construction going on and it's a little noisier than usual during those times. So people use the side routes to cut through and get from east and west to their neighborhoods that they're going to. So stop by Densmore Pathway if you can. And we're going to be putting in some new metal art. We just received it today from the artist to add to the salmon that are in there. So those are going to be installed probably in the next week. I know we're getting a 2-man or 2-person post hole digger to dig these deep holes to mount the some of the wildlife and creatures that exist in watersheds. So I'm not going to tell you who they are or what they are yet, but be looking for those along the pathway. And we have them stretching from one end of the pathway all over to the east side of the pathway. So we're trying to spread that out, hoping that maybe we can even have some more artwork in some other of the areas around our neighborhood and heading down towards Echo Lake, because it is a watershed theme. We have not had any success yet with the cattail pulling party. I know we were able to do that last year. We timed it so that we did it during the season that we're used to doing it in late July, early August. We pulled together a few of us family members and neighbors that we felt comfortable doing that last year during COVID. But this year, we tried to get a larger group together and had about 10 to 12 people, including some of the Friends of Echo Lake neighbors, to join us in the cattail pooling. And we had about 8 or 9 green bins lined up. They had some water quality issues or toxic algae bloom that's happened 2 different times since August. So we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. I'm sure Service Water will have some good and bad news and maybe some good news to tell us. So the cattail pooling part is kind of on hold. Hopefully we'll be able to do some of that next year. We're trying to determine with the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife exactly what the criteria is for the timing of it, because it sure would be swell if we didn't have to do it during the times of the year when we have all the water turning over and bringing up all the nutrients to the surface, and then being kind of endangered going into the water when there's a toxic algae bloom. And the other update I have is we're still trying to take care of getting a memorial bench for one of our neighbors that passed away several years ago, a very important individual who kind of started the neighborhood concepts and got the neighborhoods together, and also was responsible for our Veterans Plaza we have over at the City Hall. We're trying to get all the proper channels to go to get the funding. We've got the funding approved from Rod Dembowski of the King County Council. He's still campaigning to get the funding for that bench. It's about $2,500 that we're asking for. It's just a matter of going through the proper channels to get the money to us. So we're waiting for the King County Council to meet at the end of October. They have all the budget committees that go through and meet first, and that's happening probably right around now. And then sometime in the end of October, early November, they'll vote on whether it'll be approved, and it was approved before, so they should be able to approve it again. This is the second round we've tried this, but there was some mix up in the proper channels of the way the money comes to the city of Shoreline. It has to go to the neighborhood association first and then go to the city of Shoreline. So we want to make sure we're going through the proper channels. And I guess that's about all I really have to add for now. We have a few more minutes before 7:30, but anyone else want to add anything in the next couple minutes? Yeah, Jean?
Marla, do you want to plug the work party on Saturday?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I don't even have that in my notes. Yeah, we have a work party there at the Densmore Pathway, the one that's getting the new artwork. We might have the artwork, some of it installed by this Saturday. We'll see. I know there's some people that reached out via having it on our Facebook page. We've had some flyers up at the message board there. I think Diane has sent out some messages for members or neighbors. We're hoping to get anywhere from 10 to 20 people. We'll see how that goes. We've heard a few people back that I've emailed and welcomed them to come. We have put up some yard signs down there today too. So It'll be mostly putting in some of the plants that we've got through the mini grant, which are pollinator plants, and some of them are native plants that we'll be planting. So if you're not able to join us for the actual work party, if you're out on Saturday morning this week from 10 on till about 1 o'clock, rain or shine, we need that rain. Just swing by and say hello. We don't expect you to stick around. So we'll be having hopefully another work party maybe by the end of the year, or certainly next spring. Thanks, Jean, for reminding me. All right, it looks like we're all set then. We don't have any other announcements as far as the board goes. So we're going to move on to our speakers that we've had. I know we've had Christy Lovelace here before, but we have 2 other speakers that are joining her today, or guests that are from surface water, very important people that are here tonight. They're going to be talking about what goes on with surface water and stormwater systems. And we are very lucky to have several watersheds right here in the city of Shoreline. So it's, all the things that we do affects the watershed, where it's going to go into Lake Washington and on down to Puget Sound, and even folks over towards Shoreline Community College and Richmond Beach that have creeks that go directly into Puget Sound. So tonight we have John Featherstone and Stefan Grozev and Christy Lovelace who are going to be joining us. And I let you guys kind of decide who's going to go first, and we'll take it from there. Have some questions after. You've got till about 8:10, 8, something like that, but we can skip around on the agenda as whatever fits for you guys.
Okay, excellent. We've got a whole PowerPoint
Ooh.
ready to go. So
okay. All right. Well, thank you, Marla, for the introduction, and thank you, Echo Lake Neighborhood Association, for having us. And thanks, Christy, for getting the slideshow running. I'm John Featherstone. I'm the Surface Water Utility Manager for the City of Shoreline. I've worked at the city for over 7 years. I've been in my current role for a little bit over 2 years as a Surface Water Utility Manager. And I'm just really excited to get to talk to this group. I don't believe I've attended an Echo Lake Neighborhood Association meeting, definitely not in this capacity. I actually used to be involved in the Parkwood Neighborhood Association where I lived, and I attended some con meetings in that role. So I'm really appreciative of the neighborhood associations at Shoreline, and I'm really grateful to have such an engaged group of folks living around Echo Lake as well, which is one of our true surface water gems in the city. With me tonight are Christy Lovelace, who you have met before. You know how great she is. She is our expert in many things surface water, including education and outreach programs, our LID rebate program, which is sort of a hands-on version of that education and outreach, and doing a lot of water quality work and other important surface water work in the city. So Christy is a surface water star. And new to our team, now we have Stefan Grozev, who is, I think, about 4 weeks into his tenure at the city. So Stefan is filling in as the Senior Surface Water Program Specialist, and he's filling the position that was formerly held by Stuart Whitford, and before him by Melissa Ivancevich. And Stefan comes to the City of Shoreline with a strong background in consulting engineering, doing water quality work and other, NPDES permit support work in the Bay Area. I'm super excited to have both Christy and Stefan on our team, and Stefan is going to be someone who you'll be working with a lot when it comes to Echo Lake. He'll be kind of the primary contact for concerns with Echo Lake water quality and things like that, and hopefully sharing news good news, hopefully in the future, about Echo Lake water quality as well. So with that, I'll hand it off to Stefan to, even though he's only less than a month into the job, he's going to be telling you all about some of the programs that he's started managing over the last few weeks. So thanks, Stefan.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? We're all good? Okay. So I'm Stefan Grozev, and I'm really happy to be working for the City of Shoreline and to be, joining such an engaged community. So I'll go over kind of the 3 programs that we currently have that are looking at water quality at Echo Lake. And the first one is the Swimming Beach Sampling, which is a King County monitoring program that looks at bacteria concentrations in Echo Lake. And during the summer, between May and September, we collect water samples at Echo Lake Park Beach, kind of on the northern end of the lake. And the main goal of this program is to kind of check about the fecal bacteria concentrations at a location where people are likely to, interact with the water, and to ensure that they're low and that nobody kind of gets sick or, gets any kind of irritation due to fecal bacteria. So there are a few possible sources for bacteria at Echo Lake, and those include kind of improperly disposed of pet waste, wildlife, waterfowl waste. There's human waste and sources, and stuff can get carried down upstream through runoff, through inflows from streams and to outfalls into Echo Lake. So there are various pathways for potential bacteria to enter the lake. So we collect weekly samples in the summer, and based on kind of the results of those samples, and if they're too high, and we'll follow King County public health recommendations for potentially closing access to the beach until those levels fall down. While we're out there in the summer, we also keep an eye out for algae blooms that are kind of in the vicinity of the swimming beach that's on near Echo Lake Park. So the state of Washington Department of Ecology also has algae monitoring program. So when we see an algae bloom, we collect a water sample, we submit it to them, and they take a few days, and they come back to us with the results. So what we're testing for is cyanobacteria, or this blue-green algae, which is the toxic one, and it, depending on the concentrations, it can be even deadly to, I guess everybody, but especially to kids, elderly, pets. Every year you kind of read about the dangers of it, and it's becoming more and more common, especially as places, as the temperatures rise in the summer. So again, there have been, I think, two closures at Echo Lake this year. We had just opened the lake about a week ago, because the results from the samples that we collected 2 weeks ago were low. But then I got a few phone calls earlier this week from two different neighbors about a bloom happening at the beach and at the kind of the southern end where the apartment complexes are. So this morning I was there. I collected a sample from one of the apartment docks that I could get access to, and that is submitted. So I'm going to wait on the results, and we'll see kind of what our next steps are based on what happens. But there is some good news. There is a lot of rain and cooler weather coming in over this next week and a half. And we're hoping that would kind of dissipate and flush out the current algae bloom. And with the cooler weather setting in, it's less likely that a bloom would occur. Blooms kind of happen a lot more in the summer, and especially once temperatures get over, I know them in Celsius, but it's like 25 to 30. So I guess over 75 Fahrenheit, that's when toxic blooms are more likely to occur. And if blooms happen, they would be toxic. So that is the second sampling program. And, we monitor the lake every time we're out there. We make sure that we're looking for blooms, and if there are, we're sampling, but you live a lot closer and you are a lot more connected to it. So if you see something, if you see a new algae bloom, or if you don't know if we know about it, you can always kind of reach out to the city. There's a phone number here on the slide. It's 206-801-2700, and report it to us, and we'll kind of take the next steps. So again, with the bloom that's currently happening, we'll collect the sample this morning, but we'll monitor it through this kind of rainy period. And after the rains come through, we'll kind of keep looking and see what's happening, and if we need to continue collecting samples, and if we need to, have more closures. So I know Marla mentioned this already, but I do kind of want everybody to remain cautious when there's algae bloom, and there's the water already kind of doesn't look nice to be in, but if you're going to be in contact with it, just be careful. It could cause, irritation, and depending, it could be dangerous for, again, kids, the elderly, and to pets especially. So these are the first two programs, and in the next slide, I'll go to a very exciting program, which is the King County Lake Stewardship Program. It has been going on for a very long time. I actually just checked, and I think this is its 20th anniversary. It started in 2001 at Echo Lake, and it's currently led by a neighborhood volunteer group. And I think some of those lake stewards are probably at this meeting today. I am not sure, but I think they are. So I went out and sampled with them a few Sundays ago. And what they do is they row out to the middle of the lake, kind of one of the deepest part of it, and they collect a few water samples and kind of other parameters, like they test for turbidity, for temperature, for algae growth. But the one sample they collect that is kind of particular interest to us is nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen. So both phosphorus and nitrogen are naturally occurring, but their concentrations can fluctuate and they can be increased by human activities and, again, pet waste, wildlife waste, especially like fertilizers and kind of lawn care practices and runoff from over irrigation. So when all of that stuff ends up in the lake, it is likely to increase the phosphorus and the nitrogen concentrations. And that kind of matters because that's what algae feeds on. You know, you put them in your gardens as fertilizers so that your plants can grow, and algae feel the same way. So the peak for total phosphorus in the lake happened in 2015. Since then, the phosphorus concentration has dropped down, but we have had steady increase in that concentration since 2018, and we'll see what happens this year. And kind of based on these high phosphorus concentration, the observed algae growth, and the turbidity, Echo Lake is classified as a eutrophic lake. So that means that it has kind of lower water quality than other lakes, and it is more susceptible to algae blooms. And that's, again, because of the nutrients in it. And when those new algae blooms occur, they're not always necessarily bad, but with a eutrophic lake and, you know, somewhere where you have so much runoff that ends up in the lake, it is more likely that there'll be this blue-green or toxic algae. And, you know, that leads to dangers for you and for closures. And there are some practices to kind of try to mitigate some of these factors that could affect the water quality and the nutrients in the lake. And Christy will go over them in a little bit, but, you know, picking up after a wet pet, avoiding feeding ducks, and making sure, you know, they don't get overfed so that they don't poop as much in the lake. And that might have a better effect, and especially, you know, changes to lawn care practice to more sustainable ones. And again, Christy will go over that in a bit more detail. So if we go to the next slide, you will see some links, and you can go to these links and you can find a lot more detail about these programs, and you can find the results of these programs and all of the sampling that we do at Echo Lake. It's all publicly available, and it can be kind of found in these links. There's a little bit of digging with the King County ones. You just have to locate Echo Lake on their little drop-down menus. And so that third link there for the Lake Stewardship Echo Lake long-term trends, you can find the King County publishes yearly reports, and they kind of summarize the findings of the program throughout the year and kind of what the trends are, looking at the past and how's that changed. So that report gets published every following April. So the Lake Stewardship Program they're doing their last sample collection, I think, this Sunday. So next April 2022, King County will be publishing this report that will look and summarize the data collected over this last year. And again, I'm really excited to be working with all of you, and it's so great to see everybody so involved in the lake and looking out for it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to take the mic back for just a second. And before I talk a little bit more about this algae program grant, I just wanted to just keep an eye on our overall presentation and let you know that we did plan this slideshow. We do intend to leave time for questions at the end, and I think we should make sure that we leave at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end. So if we start coming up on 8 o'clock, we'll just sort of get to the point where you can ask questions. If you have burning questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'm not necessarily going to be watching everybody raising a hand. Feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt too. That's also fine with us. But if you can, it'd be good to save the questions till the end. And the intention behind our presentation is to give some overviews on our understanding of Echo Lake surface water issues, potential ways we can address them, more maybe general topics in surface water management without going too far in any of those directions, keeping it pretty focused on the subject of Echo Lake, and then again, leaving time for questions at the end so we can have a two-way conversation. It's not just us talking to you. And then of course, making sure that we get out of here before the state representatives go on. They're the real stars tonight, so we don't want to take up their time. But anyway, so before I start talking about the grant, did anybody have anything about the sort of first part of our presentation that they'd like to have questions, or you want to hold them till the end? Okay, well, I will talk a little bit about the grant. Christy, I don't know if the slide got away from us. It was just there. Okay, great, thank you. So just really briefly, there is so the algae, the toxic algae blooms in particular, and you know, not all algae is toxic. That's something important to remember, but there are, you know, recurrences of both non-toxic and toxic algae in Echo Lake. And there are grant programs available through the State Department of Ecology that would provide some funding for analyzing the sources of these Echo Lake algae blooms and then potentially treating them. So we, Anne from the Friends of Echo Lake group was somebody who brought this to our attention. We've also been coordinating with our King County Lake Stewardship contact, who seems to support us as, you know, this might be a good direction for us to go in. I'm being a little non-committal in a sort of classic local government role because I don't want to overpromise. There is a component of this grant that the city would have to put up a 25% match. And of course, we would have to provide staff resources to manage the grant. But generally speaking, it seems like a good program, a program where we will likely want to go ahead and make an application. It seems like even though it's a competitive grant, I would say my understanding is our chances would be fairly good. And then what would happen is we would have some funding that would help support us to hire a consultant to analyze the sources of nutrients in Echo Lake and how those feed into the algae cycle, and then how do you disrupt those nutrients, right? You can't just sort of start throwing chemicals or doing other things to the lake without studying it. So this grant might be one approach that we could supplement funding, which is normally pretty limited from the city side, make the city's available funding go further and analyze this problem and start on the road towards potential treatments and approaches so we can help to combat the nutrients, I guess you could say, the eutrophication issue that Stefan was talking about. And they did something similar in Green Lake. Some of you may recall, probably about 30 years ago, I think, the alum treatments was what they ended up doing. I'm not sure if alum would be the most appropriate treatment for Echo, but that's what this study would be looking into, something like that. So anyway, stay tuned. We will continue to work on this and see what we can do with this grant, potentially using this grant funding source. That's about all I had to say to that, and we're going to keep on moving. Yeah, and again, if you have any questions, please feel free to break in if it's urgent, or wait till the end. All right, Christy, here's some things you can do.
Ooh, yes. So yes, it would be great to get a larger scale treatment, but in the meantime, it's really important to think about the sources of those nutrients and what we can do to help mitigate those. These are really collective actions that we need to take. So of course, Echo Lake is not just the folks living directly on it, but the entire watershed. So just actions that we're trying to promote throughout the city, and then in Echo Lake as well, of course, as part of the city. So the first step is don't feed the ducks and geese. I am going to go into this in a bit more detail, but as you can see from this slide over here, and as Stefan had mentioned, when we get overfed birds, we get a lot more waste from those birds, and it tends to be in the areas where people are most likely to enter the water, and it causes some fecal bacteria problems, and of course adds nutrients to the lakes as well. Fewer garden chemicals. So a really easy term that you can Google search is natural yard care. And natural yard care is focused on how you can reduce your use of synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and weed and feed products, and still have a beautiful garden and really a low maintenance and oftentimes an easier to manage garden. I am happy. I have a gazillion resources on this, so please send me an email if you're interested. We've had some workshops. We have a free resource that King County residents can contact if you have any specific questions and you're looking for guidance. It's the garden hotline. I have sent photos into them of leaves with weird bites taken out of them and marking, and they've been able to help me identify the pest that's bothering my tree and solutions for it. They're so fantastic. I will plug it into the chat as well before we leave here tonight. As Stefan mentioned, pet waste, scoop it up, throw it in the trash. Don't let it get into the lake. It's gross on several levels and obviously problematic. Maintaining septic and side sewers. So throughout the Puget Sound region, there's been a lot of focus on septic sewer maintenance for preventing fecal pollution in waterways. There's been less emphasis on side sewers, but the sort of principles are just the same. If there is a leak, that it's going to travel through groundwater resources and it will enter those surface waters as well. So it's really important to maintain those systems, and if you do have a leaky system, to try to resolve it. And then finally, this is, for those of you that are fortunate enough to live right up on the lake, or maybe on one of the streams that feeds into the lake, or any stream and shoreline for that matter, restoring riparian buffers has a whole host of environmental benefits, but can help with nutrients in the water as well. So we have two programs that can really help you to convert to create those wider native plantings of buffering in between the water and further up on your property. The first is the Soak It Up program. We offer up to $2,000 to convert lawn space or hardscape, or if you've got a patch of invasive plants into native plantings, and that can be applied towards restoring a riparian buffer. The King Conservation District also has a program focused on water, or people who live right up on the water, and restoring these buffers. And they offer both a financial incentive and technical assistance as well. If you are interested in either of these, please shoot me an email and I will get you connected. Okay, so I want to spend a few minutes and just talk about some of the activities we've been doing on the water or around Echo Lake and around the city of Shoreline to help reduce this water quality issue of nutrients and of fecal pollution in particular. So earlier this year, an ordinance was passed that officially prohibits feeding ducks, geese, or any waterfowl on the lake. It can really contribute to fecal bacteria spikes, especially where people are most likely to recreate, and it can cause people to get very sick. It's been a problem at Echo Lake, and it's been a particularly large issue at Hidden Lake as well. So we are encouraging people. We're using, even though it is a park rule, we're really focusing on the education, because a lot of people just don't really understand that feeding ducks and geese is problematic both to water quality, but is also really a problem for the birds themselves. So you should see shortly in the next few weeks some new signs going up, our standard blue park signs that are telling people not to feed the waterfowl. But we also have these educational postcards that I know that some of the folks in this virtual room have seen. If you observe at Echo Lake, I would ask for any of our parks, if you observe a chronic feeder or somebody is maybe going there at a certain time of day where maybe we could appear and help out with that and provide this information to them, we would really appreciate that. Please reach out to me and let me know. If you have any events going on in the Echo Lake area and you'd like to provide some of these postcards, we have them translated into quite a few languages, and we would be happy to share these if you're willing to share them out with other people as well. I also just want to give a big shout out to Pat Deegan here, who alerted us to the ducks as we're trying to get people not to feed the waterfowl. He alerted us to the problem of the ducks feasting themselves on the apple tree at Echo Lake Park. And we're able to take that information and coordinate with Parks for an apple cleanup. And the apples are all done for the season. Parks was able to get out there and continually clean them up. And it sounded like some Echo Lake residents maybe went out there and did the same. So if you were one of those people, thank you so much for helping with that. And we certainly have our eye on that moving forward. Another really tough source of pollution that we are probably dealing with at Echo Lake is human waste that is likely caused from the homeless populations that we do see at the park. We are coordinating with our Parks Department right now to figure out solutions to reduce that human waste on the property. Homelessness is just, it's tough, and we have it throughout the whole region. And so we do have some strategies in mind that we hope will help. And we're continuing to really figure out how we will approach that and how we can reduce that source of waste as well. But here, this image, if you don't recognize it, this is the willow tree that's right alongside the beach. This was getting pretty overgrown and was certainly an access point for people to go in and use the lake as a restroom. And so it has been cleared out, and we're just further coordinating with Parks about how we can really make sure that we have a strong ecological buffer there, and also something that has a little bit of sight line, isn't making for a desirable place to go nestle in. Okay. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to John to talk a little bit about development and what we do in terms of stormwater standards for development.
Thank you, Christy. And I promise I'll keep this super brief because I could talk about this stuff for like hours, literally. But basically, we've heard concerns from different citizens in Shoreline, including those around Echo Lake, about, well, what's all this redevelopment going to do to Echo Lake or our receiving waters, our streams, all those downstream systems that Marla was talking about, because all of our local streams go into either Lake Washington or Puget Sound, and there's salmon and orcas and all these things we want to protect, right? As well as the streams and local water bodies themselves. So the development itself, without going into too much detail, basically the story to tell with that is, once upon a time, all this area was old growth forest and wetlands and things like that before European arrival and development and settling in the area. Of course, most of the development in Shoreline didn't really start happening until the 40s, 50s, 60s. And stormwater management in those days basically consisted of, let's pave some stuff, let's put up some buildings, and we're going to put the water into a ditch or a pipe, and then we're going to stick that in the nearest stream. And we're done. That's it. And of course, we realized within a few years of that happening, really by the 70s, locally, I know like some things like Bowen Creek was getting severely eroded by all of the development along Aurora. Every stream has a little bit of a different story in this area, but they're all kind of similar, right? That original stage of development was not good for our creeks. Everything that hit the pavement went into a drain and went into a stream. Shoreline currently, our stormwater system is a lot of the legacies of that original development in the 50s and 60s. So most places, stormwater hits the pavement, goes into a drain, goes into a stream, same thing. Little by little, in more recent years, as things redevelop little by little, we have regulations in place so that redeveloping properties now trigger stormwater controls. This also applies to public projects. So when we redid Aurora, that whole length of Aurora got a whole lot of stormwater control that wasn't there before. And the same thing applies to private projects. They are now, unless it's a very small project, it will trigger flow control, which slows down the water leaving the property. So it doesn't all just rush off. It goes into a tank. Typically, we try to get it to soak into the ground whenever possible. If it flows over surfaces that are pollution generating, so mostly this is like parking lots and roadways and driveways and certain kinds of other materials, we make sure that those sources of pollution are removed as much as possible by filtration and other means like that. So generally speaking, redevelopment is actually better for stormwater than what was there before. Obviously, I won't speak to trees being removed because oftentimes trees are impacted by development and they provide important stormwater functions. So it's kind of, I would say the net balance, you still have benefit towards stormwater from redevelopment. However you feel about the redevelopment in our city, generally it's going to benefit stormwater and surface water and provide more protection than what was currently out there, what was there before that property redeveloped. So I see it's 7:56 and I just want to keep on going. That's my little stormwater 101, but we can certainly come back to that later if folks have questions about that.
All right, thanks, John. I'm gonna hit these next few slides pretty quick so we can move on, but I just want to talk about a couple more ways if you would like to get involved and help, just some areas we could use that support in. All right, so 'tis the season, it's the big leaf drop. It's probably going to happen in the next couple of days. So just a timely reminder to please sweep the leaves and any other debris off of the sidewalks and roads, get them out of that area so they don't get swept down into ditches and storm drains. This helps to keep our storm drain system from clogging up, and it helps to reduce the likelihood of flooding for some unfortunate person downstream of that clogged drain or ditch. Also, because the leaves are dropping, we do have street sweepers out, so be looking for them, and if possible, move your car into the driveway so they can collect as many leaves as possible. Just a plug, I'm pretty sure I've given it to this group before, but we do have a volunteer program in which you can adopt a drain near your home and submit your volunteer hours for that. So if you have a drain or a ditch that you're clearing out and you'd like to join our volunteer team, or that you'd be interested in clearing out, we would love to have you. So please reach out to me if you are interested in that. Another really big way that you can help is if you see any spills or if you see any illegal dumping. So anything, I mean, we say only rain down the drain and we mean it. So if you see natural debris, construction, dirt, and sediment on the roadway, any sort of bubbly water, anything that looks like it clearly has a chemical, anything that is not rainwater going into a drain, please let us know. The sooner that you let us know, the more quickly we can get to those drains and hopefully suck out whatever material that is before it reaches a natural waterway. So I've listed the number down here. I know that, you probably all memorize numbers immediately, but in case you don't, this is just the City Hall number. So it's the main, you can call City of Shoreline 24/7, and we've got somebody who will be able to respond as soon as possible, but we take those calls. The same goes for flooding. We're entering a wet season. It's a La Nina year, which means we're probably going to get a little bit heavier rain than usual. So if you see a storm drain that is backed up or a ditch that is backed up, or if you see flooding happening in the right of way, please let us know. We have crews available to go out and help and support those situations. The bigger the storm, the more strapped that crew is going to be, but we do send folks out as soon as possible to address that throughout the city. So please call City Hall if you see any of this. And finally, you can see some faces that I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor here. I'm circling the side of Marla's head, but we had a fantastic event this past Saturday. So Marla works side by side with Shoreline Parks to host volunteer events at Brugger's Bog. I had the pleasure of joining them this past Saturday. We celebrated Orca Recovery Day. It's a day where people get together and host restoration events across Puget Sound. Really, it went from Oregon all the way up to Canada this year. Over 50 events, people getting together to restore the environment and just make it better for all of our really iconic, and I mean, not even the iconic ones, but just the whole aquatic environment that we have, our streams to our lakes to Puget Sound, in an effort to support the orcas and all of those other really incredible animals. But this was the first volunteer event in a while because of COVID. And my understanding is that they will be starting back up again, and there's multiple parks that you can volunteer at. But restoring our environment is a really great way to also help improve water quality. And so if you feel like getting a shovel or ripping out some blackberries, there are plenty of opportunities to do that. Marla would be your contact, she'd be the expert on that. All right. Hey, 8 o'clock on the dot. All right. So I'd like to open it up for questions now. I see some things popping up in the chat, but just to flag this right here, if you'd like to contact any of us, here is our contact information, and I'll leave this slide up.
Okay, well, we can all, I don't know if we want to, I see a hand on Patrick. I didn't see anything in the chat, so maybe Chrissy, it was just for you.
Yeah, there is something in the chat asking about the hours for the Portland Loo, if it's open 24/7, or if it's, if you know, I know Pat Deegan might have some input on that also.
Yeah.
The loo is locked each night at dark. Might be 7, might be 8. And then it's PM, and then it'll be open tomorrow morning at about 6:15, usually 6:30. And that's 7 days a week with some variety on some days. What I wanted to ask about, when I see the algae, could it be that it's related primarily to the wind? It seems to me there are days when it's absolutely nothing, and then the next morning there's a lot of algae right near the beach. Like you had the picture, we had this picture of algae near the beach, and it seems like the waves are the wind is coming, concentrating there, because it can then disappear. But that's just what I wondered. You've talked about taking samples different places and coming down and taking samples when it's there, but I wondered, that's been on my mind. Is it simply related to the wind that day?
Yeah, I would say that the wind can play a factor. You know, the algae blooms algae moves around, like colonies of it can start growing and they can expand in different areas. So that's why we kind of, when during the summer, we only check the beach because, so during the summer, when we only check the beach for the bacteria sampling, we kind of look only around the beach. But since I've started, a month ago, I've had a few calls about people seeing it in other areas. So I've just went there as well to look and check it out and to sample. So it is mobile, it moves around, and that's part of why we are hoping that these rains and cooler weather can flush it out.
We have a raised hand from Frank Church.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know anything about algae, and which is why I'm here. But is there any sort of, if there's an existing algae out there that's not toxic, can it over time become toxic? Yeah, I just wanted to know.
I don't know if it can become. I know that the toxic algae that are being monitored for, those are specific species. They're kind of just like plants, but they're in the water. So specific species are toxic, and when their concentrations are higher, they can become more dangerous to people. If it's an algae bloom, doesn't have to be a toxic algae bloom, and if it's not a toxic algae bloom, it might not look pretty, but it's not going to be poisonous, essentially, or toxic. I still wouldn't eat it or anything, but yeah. Anne has a question.
Oh, Anne, you're muted.
Sorry, technical difficulties. I guess my understanding was that the toxic algae is not really an algae, it's a bacteria. And that it's produced by certain algae. And maybe it's Department of Ecology or EPA the Lake Protective Association is, debating whether you even call it actually a bloom anymore, since it's not technically a bloom. So I think so my understanding is that non-toxic algae can start creating the toxic bacteria that we call toxic algae. So I don't know if does that sound like what you've heard, Stefan or John?
I would say this is one where I'm going to have to say I don't know. I do know that's a cyanobacteria, right? It's a different thing than the filamentous algae. I don't know about the relationship, so that's honestly I'd have to say I don't know. That might be something for us to look into, and certainly if we're going to get or pursue an algae grant, we would be studying the algae. I think that would be an interesting relationship to see if the filamentous algae has a relationship with the toxic. I hadn't been aware of if there's an association or not. I just wanted to respond to the Portland Loo question since we kind of moved on from it. But my understanding was I talked to Dan Johnson, who's the Parks and Facilities manager. I believe that's his title. But from what I recall hearing from him, and this is sort of anecdotal, so don't quote me, but I believe the concern was that people, if it was open 24 hours, would sleep in it and it would become more vandalized, less useful, more, you're going to have to put more time into it and get less use out of it if it was open overnight because of that concern. So that's my understanding why that's locked overnight. But certainly I could relay questions about that to Dan, or you could ask questions directly to Dan Johnson about that facility specifically. John, I think I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks for addressing the Portland Loo. I was just kind of getting at, it seems like a trade-off, right, between if there are people living there regularly at night and there's no viable way to use the restroom, then I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm just saying it's a trade-off, and was trying to prompt that discussion. I guess my question really is a little bit different. It's about phosphorus, and how big of a concern are things like car washing? I didn't really see that emphasized. And if we see car washing in the area that drains to Echo Lake, what's your recommendation? Call your hotline, try and educate them ourselves, assuming it is a concern, I guess. So that's a two-part question, I suppose.
Christy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah.
I see you nodding.
I'm trying to think. So, car washes, of course, can have the heavy metals, right? Which is, and I believe that phosphorus would fall into that. So I think it can be a source of phosphorus. And I would just say, like I'm putting on my cap of, when I'm out and about in the world outside of my job, it can be really hard sometimes to have those conversations. But if it's somebody that you feel like you can have an effective conversation with, I certainly encourage you to let them know. But if you don't think it's going to be an effective conversation, you can certainly report it to that spill line. If you can recall to, you can also send me an email, right? My job is to do the outreach, and we can send them a letter and let them know. It's not like they're gonna come get slapped with a fine, first time they're washing their car. People are still really learning, similar to the waterfowl. So you can certainly lean on us to have that conversation as well.
And I did just Google that question, John. Apparently soaps and detergents do have phosphates and phosphorus. I don't know how much they contribute, but we definitely would not want that going in the lake. So I think that's the general response is, yeah, we would not want that in the lake. Just keep an eye on time. We don't want to keep the state reps waiting, but we might have time for one more quick one if there's one out there.
I did. So there's one in the chat that's sort of been hanging here from Kathy, who's asking, eutrophication is well studied. What factors determine a preferred treatment?
That's another one I have to say I don't know. It's outside of my experience, but I would say that my understanding is with the phosphorus cycle, it can be present within the sediments, and part of the cycle is that it gets resuspended from sediments, and so that can be a really persistent issue. Of course, it can also come from more local sources and sort of seasonal and other surface sources. So I don't know this for sure, so I'm just being speculative here, but I'm guessing that the study will initially try to assess the sediments to see how much phosphorus is in the sediments, potentially some other sources like stormwater discharge, if there's other potential sources of phosphorus and nutrients, and then seeing what's the most appropriate control for that. But again, this is sort of well outside of what I have experience with. I'm fairly speculative in that answer.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Thank you very much, John. We sure appreciate it. This has been the most fantastic presentation I think we've had in quite a while about Echo Lake. Yeah. I know Stuart had mentioned before about that grant when we were chatting last year, and it would be absolutely exciting if that were to follow through. So thank you for doing that. And I also was just looking through my emails about our closures we've had at Echo Lake, and there was that kind of wonky one that happened back in April that was a neurotoxin, in addition to the ones we had later in the summer. So my own personal thought is that we've been having a lot this year more than we usually do, just because of the wonky climate that's going on. And maybe as we're finishing up here, I'd like to thank Stefan for joining the team. We feel like we're so well taken care of having you three here. We have three of the lake stewards that do of the four lake stewards that are here, John Pulka and Ann Michelle, and then myself, that do the water quality testing along with your staff too. So we'll be doing that up until the end of October, unless we need it for anything else. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us tonight. There were some great questions, and we look forward to being in touch with you guys again if there are any more questions we have at all. I'm not sure if that phone number that you had, Christy, if that was customer response team. It might have been, but I know it's real easy to get a hold of them at City Hall if you have any concerns about any matter at all you see.
Yes,
all
that's
right.
the number.
Yeah, thank you so much, John
right.
and Christy and Stefan. And you guys take care and enjoy the rest of your evening. And we'll move on to our representatives and senator we have joining us tonight.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Lauren Davis. Thanks so much for having us. You've got your whole friendly 30-second delegation tonight. And we just want to thank you so much for having us and giving us the chance to say hello. As you all know, we are gearing up for our short legislative sessions. We've got a 60-day session as opposed to the longer 105-day session. We return January 10th. And so we're all busy virtually in our virtual offices getting bills ready and things, but really just wanted to have a chance to briefly introduce ourselves tonight, and then really to hear from you, and happy to take comments about areas of concern, happy to take ideas that you have around bills or budget provisos or just issues that you'd like to see addressed. Happy to take questions about issues related to state government or state agencies. So just really want to devote most of the time to hearing from all of you. But just very quickly, for those of you that I don't know, again, my name is Lauren. I was elected first in 2018, so finished my third session. And my professional background is in behavioral health, so mental health and substance use disorders and suicide prevention. And that is a lot of the work that I do in the legislature stems from that. But because behavioral health is actually so interrelated, it actually pulls me into a lot of different arenas. So I do work in the education space because you think about particularly our young people, mental health concerns and anxiety and depression were hit so hard because of COVID and the isolation and removing of protective factors. And when we think about school discipline violations related to substance use, there's certainly a significant correlation between behavioral health and our broader healthcare system and healthcare costs and high utilizers of emergency services. There's a very large overlap between behavioral health and public safety, both from a kind of property crime side of the ledger, but also when it comes to when we're thinking about corrections and the population that we incarcerate in this country is primarily people living with untreated or undertreated mental health or substance use challenges of one form or another. And when we think about police reform, 1 in 4 killings that are police involved, the original 911 call was in response to a behavioral health emergency of some kind. So that work really is at the center of so many other issues, and including also child welfare. So a parent with an untreated behavioral health challenge is the #1 cause of entry into the child welfare system in Washington State. So that is sort of my sermon on behavioral health and how it really is central to so many of the other issues that we deal with in state government, and affects so many people in our community in Shoreline as well. So that's me, and I will pass it off to whichever of my seatmates would like to go next. Neither. There you
Hey,
go,
rep
Jessica.
first, huh? Let's Representative Ryu. Do you want to go?
Sure, I can speak. Hi, everyone. Cindy Ryu, representing the 32nd, along with my fantastic seatmates. So thank you for this time, inviting us into your living rooms or your neighborhood association meeting. My current committee assignment is that I am chairing the Community and Economic Development Committee. It is a brand new committee besides Community and Economic Development. We also have jurisdiction over telecommunications and broadband, as well as state parks, tourism, disaster preparedness. So all the fun stuff. So where I'm spending, and before this committee, I used to chair the housing committee for the last 5 years, but now it is being headed by our neighbor, Representative Strom Peterson, and he's doing a fine job there. And so what I'm spending the most time with for my committee, obviously, is broadband and internet, as well as getting the not only the infrastructure out, but also making sure as much as possible that is affordable, and also that we increase adoption, especially by the elderly and the children, of course, and even people who are challenged with language access. And then the other couple of places that I'm spending a lot of time is on tourism. And that is an exciting space because the federal government, Congress, just designated 3,000 miles of waterfront all along Pacific Ocean of Washington State, all of the interior of Puget Sound, the Salish Sea, including shoreline waterways here, as a maritime, let's see, NHA, National Heritage Area. And so it's an exciting time because I've been working on tourism, especially through the Washington Tourism Marketing Authority over the last 7 years, because we had zeroed out our state tourism dollars. And so we had to recreate it from the ground up. And so we are working on branding for the state right now. And so we are, especially with the timing of recovering from pandemic, is extremely important. And as you probably know, one of the I guess the industry sectors that was impacted the fastest and the deepest by the pandemic was in the tourism and leisure sector. But you know, we're recovering, and we're trying to build back up, especially the cultural and the creative economy. So it's an exciting time. So the last area that I am spending a lot of time on, it's the Furcrest campus. As you may be aware, it's almost about 90 acres of it. Historically, mostly DSHS has been using it. And of course, the health lab, the National Health Lab is there. Washington State Health Lab is there. But there's about 12 acres that are not being used right now. And I felt, and along with my seatmates, we all felt it was about time that we started planning for the long-term use. And so that would be the southwest corner of the campus, as well as the southeast corner. So if you have time, please go and take a look at it. And so I've convened so far 2 stakeholder meetings, and these are once a month. So if you're interested, especially from the community perspective, or if you are associated with a nonprofit that delivers services such as mental health, and we're trying to get some sort of a multi-generational and multicultural services there, along with maybe about 400 units of housing. So if you're interested in it, either as a community member or from your, I guess, your passion or your job position as a nonprofit worker, then please let me know. And the next meeting is on November the 15th at 3 p.m. And we try to finish the meetings within an hour. And so we've got a nice group of agency folks, nonprofit people, as well as some legislators attending the meeting. So I welcome you to what I'm calling the community stakeholder meeting for Furcrest campus. I'll post my email address, so you may email me to indicate interest, and Shelby, my legislative assistant, will send you an invitation. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jesse Solomon. I'm your state senator, and some of you may know me from my time on the Shoreline City Council as a council member and deputy mayor for 7 years. And I also, a bit about my background, I'm a public defender. I've been doing that for about 15 years and worked as a child welfare prosecutor for a few years before I got into that work. Right now, I sit on the Law and Justice Committee and the Housing and Local Government Committee, and I'm the vice chairman of Natural Resources, Water and Parks. So Law and Justice, we deal with a lot of the police reform stuff. Happy to take questions, talk about that. Of housing, we deal with housing affordability and as it relates to local government issues. And then Natural Resources, I focus a lot on salmon recovery and on water issues. Water is becoming increasingly scarce, and the future on that is troublesome because of climate change. So while we've done a lot on carbon mitigation, so we passed the carbon cap and trade bill, we also have to think about the reality of climate change being here right now, and the question of how we mitigate, how we deal with the changes, how we preserve the water, the salmon, the wildlife, etc. Just real quick, a few of the bills that I worked on last year that we passed: a driver's license reform bill, so a criminal justice bill that I wrote that says no longer if you can't pay your tickets for speeding, things like that, will you then lose your license and be criminally liable if you drive. That was sort of an anti-poverty policy, right, that we changed. So right now, if you have 3 moving violations in a year, you lose your license, but it has nothing to do with whether you can pay it or not. So that's the change that we made, and I think that's a lot more fair. So it ensures public safety and doesn't criminalize poverty. It just relates to whether you're badly driving or not. I was able to pass a bill that protects longshore workers, dock workers, union workers from losing their jobs to automation through the ports, and passed. I heard some supermarket workers here in Shoreline complaining early during the pandemic that they weren't allowed to wear PPE, personal protective equipment, because their employers thought it would scare the customers. And I was like, that. I just thought that was obviously crazy. So we passed a law that I wrote that says that if you during a pandemic want to bring your own PPE, at the very least, they can't fire you or discipline you for that. They have to allow that. And then in terms of, I know we might get some questions about interurban trail and some of the crime there. And that also intersects with the fact that the state Supreme Court threw out the drug possession prohibition law, essentially, during the middle of our session. They essentially made possession of drugs legal, so we had to do something. There was a feeling amongst the majority of our caucus, the Democratic caucus, that we don't want to go back to the war on drugs. Leaves a really big question of what do you do? We did focus more on behavioral health and funding treatment, but it still leaves a question in my mind of accountability. So what I'm working on is a bill that says, okay, we're not going to criminally charge you for drug possession, but you have to get assessed for treatment. And if you use drugs in public and are found to have a drug addiction or drug problem, you will have to get the appropriate treatment if it's available and covered by insurance, things like that. or you could be held in contempt of court, and it would be applied justly and fairly. But I think we just need to figure out a way where we want to sort of wind down this stigma of people having these criminal records over this, but at the same time, not turning a blind eye to what we all see in this community. So I'll leave it at that. Happy to answer any questions.
So we would just love to open it up if folks want to, I don't know what your customs are here at Echo Lake, if you want to raise your Zoom hand or just unmute. I think we're pretty informal, but really just wanted to hear from you. Questions, comments, ideas, criticism, all is welcome.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lauren. I just want everybody to know who's here tonight watching in the neighborhood that the 32nd district legislators contacted us. We didn't contact them. We should have probably a lot sooner. So I know this is pretty cool having some state reps here and Senator. I don't know about some of the other board members, but seems in my history of being here about 6 or 7 years, we have stayed pretty close to with our neighborhood in our state, not reached out to our state reps as much as we have had in our local shoreline mayor and council members. But it's so nice to have an opportunity. I think maybe some of our neighbors will probably have some questions soon, and we're hoping that tonight they're kind of like, wow, where do I even start? So it's wonderful to see your faces, and we'd love to have you back. And I think everyone's going to feel comfortable reaching out to you guys and you're getting your email information and looking up your website, your Facebook pages and contact, because I know maybe we're not getting a lot of questions now, but it's what you've said tonight is that we're going to lead the way for maybe some more learning opportunities for people. I know I'm really excited about the information about Furlands going on. That's pretty cool. All right, Jean, you have a comment or a question?
A comment, I guess.
Okay.
And I'll reiterate Marla's wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been involved with some of you before, but the list of what you're doing is amazing to hear it all in one place. So thank you generally for all you do. And I probably would have a lot of questions, but the main thing is just taking it all in tonight. So thanks for being here. I know you're busy people.
Yeah, I was trying to look up, some bios to see what your committees and what you're working on now. And I think, wow, there's so many different topics. I don't even know where I would even start.
That's the thing. Like both Cindy and I moved from local government to state government, and the one thing I like about it, but it's also overwhelming, is if there's anything you're interested in, you can do it. You want a bill on that, you can do it. So I got a bill on water, I got a bill on criminal justice, I got a bill on labor union stuff, I got a bill on police reform. It's like anything that interests you. So it's amazing and overwhelming.
Yeah, wow. Well, we're very fortunate, and we had a great meeting tonight. I think we have about maybe almost 30 people watching earlier. We had some come and go for one reason or another. I know we had a board member that had to leave early because he had a work project that's coming tomorrow. But every month we've been trying to meet like this. I think we've missed, let's see, I know we haven't missed many since the pandemic started. We have a very good tech member on our board who's gotten us going with our Zoom, and our Shoreline Area News editor, Diane Hetrick, having her on the board is very helpful. And for those people that are attending, we're always looking for new board members at some point. So there's 8 of us now, but we like to bring in new people as much as we can. So I know here where I live, close to 185th and the light rail station area, we've been rezoned. So I've seen a lot more new faces and younger families, young couples, individuals moving into the area that are really want to reach out and connect. First, I was like, oh, more townhomes, more people. But now it's, there's a bright side to it. And I'm just looking out across the new 7 townhomes right across the street that could look right into my single family dwelling. But geez, they've got, decorations up and Halloween colors. And so it's very nice to see all the variety. And I can still go to my backyard and be back there with my plants, but up front on the sidewalk, it's kind of cool. We live in a great city. All right,
well, I raised my hand again, and then I realized you probably can't see it.
Oh yeah, I can see you. Yeah, I thought if you were scratching your head or anything, Jean.
Not this time. I wasn't waving this time. Jesse, you were talking about bills, and could you quickly walk through the process of the bill? You get the idea, then where does it go from there?
Yeah, I'd say thank you, Jean. Good to see you, Larry. It's been a few years. So yeah, you get an idea. Most ideas you find out for some reason or another not going to work. Maybe because the federal law is preempted or whatnot. But you do a little research, and we have great staff. We have both like just nonpartisan research staff, and then we have political staff who can kind of figure out, is this, what are the chances this bill has of passing, and they can help you communicate with other members, things like that. But if it looks like a go initially, then you want to start stakeholdering it. So who are the people that are affected, both in the community, and who's going to be for it, who's going to be against it. So who are your allies, who are your opponents? And those, for better or worse, tend to be what we call special interests, right? People with lobbyists in Olympia. And so you want to, some people say, like, why do you work with lobbyists? Like, well, because they, for better or worse, and it entirely depends on the situation, have influence with other members, and you need those members' votes. So you got to work with those legislators, you got to work with the lobbyists to get it going, and then introduce it to a committee, get the committee chair to agree to hear the bill, and then you have a hearing on the bill. Anybody who wants to come in and testify, we're probably going to do it virtually this year, can do that, and or send in written comments. And then we will, as a committee, vote on the bill, hopefully pass it out. And then it goes to either the financial committee if the bill costs money, or go straight to what we call rules, which is sort of the gatekeeping function. It's there's a lot of bills that come towards the floor, but there's limited floor time every session. So you have to pick and choose your bills. And so if the members of the legislature on the rules committee choose your bill, then you get to have a meeting with the entire caucus, so the Democrats and the Senate on my side. And if they give a vote count, so it looks like that we have 25 votes, a majority, or maybe there's 1 or 2 Republicans that'll vote for it, and 3 Democrats, then we'll tend to run the bill and then send it over to the House, where it all repeats itself, and vice versa. And then you got to make sure the governor signs it. So it's always a challenge. That's the way it's designed to be, and that can be frustrating if your bills that you like die, but relieving when you see bills that you don't like that die. So it is what it is. It's a
the one thing I was going to offer is, Senator Solomon talked about where ideas come from. Very often ideas for bills come from constituents. So they come from a constituent contacting a member to solve a problem, but it turns out that problem is not unique to that particular constituent, but rather a systemic problem of sorts. Or they have, a problem with their child in the school system, or something that happened at a hospital, and you start to dig into this, and you can impact the lives of many, many that way. I think people are not frequently unaware of this incredible power that you have, just because you live in a given district and you have not just your city council and your county council, but you have us too, and we want to be your allies, and we want you to tell us what's happening. Even just hearing, Marla, what you were saying about your neighborhood, that's super helpful. It so happens that all 3 of us live in Shoreline, but we also have part of Edmonds and most of Linwood and part of Seattle and part of Mountlake Terrace. It's a fairly large district, and so it's really helpful to hear, what's the pulse of Echo Lake these days? What's happening? What's great? What are you worried about? And some of it might be hyper local things that might be city council, but to Senator Solomon's point, the breadth and depth of what we cover in the state legislature is almost everything, with the exception of a couple issues that are uniquely federal, things like foreign policy and immigration and things like that. But we can do so much good in this role, and we really rely on you guys to help us know what's working and what's broken. So again, tonight or anytime, please do reach out to us.
Okay, great. Well, that's good to hear. I have a comment I guess I can make. Where I live is very close to Aurora Avenue. And probably things that I have concerns me the most, having lived here most of my adult life, is just like anywhere else in the larger cities and the suburbs, is the homelessness and the affordable housing, and any place for someone to be able to have shelter. Shoreline is keeping up with that. I think they're doing pretty good in their obviously have to have most of those services near areas that have public transit, even though they're trying to spread it out as much as they can to be equitable through all the different neighborhoods. So it's not just single family homes in nice neighborhoods and then all the lower income, the affordable housing, et cetera, is in other areas concentrated around the it's also complicated because it's a web of how, many people have to have public transportation where that's usually where people need it, and people that are living out in the suburbs and larger lots and nicer homes probably have a car at home and they don't use the buses as often. Where I am situated here in Echo Lake, we're close to the my Metro Transit Center for Snohomish County and their community transit, and also King County Metro. And being on Aurora, we see a lot, again, especially I do because I live very close to Aurora Avenue. And it concerns me when I have a woman jumping over my fence into my backyard, coming in my back door during the day, and surprising me because she was approaching me to purchase something at our home, which she could have easily just knocked on my front door. And after listening to her with her story, I wanted to give her 2 minutes for her to tell her story. So she felt important. She was clearly someone who needed someone to listen to her, some help, a space to just vent and a place to stay warm. But she was angry and a little out of control. She could have been on drugs at the time. I wasn't able to identify that for sure. I was concerned about her safety because she was alone. She could have jumped out on the street, got hit by a car. Heaven forbid the driver would have been startled and could have been guilty of hitting a pedestrian. But she continued to walk down the street to another neighbor's house and had a fit down there and started throwing furniture off their porch. And the poor Shoreline Police Department, when they came, she refused help. And that's so complicated to say that someone who's on this state of mind, to know that they're able to tell themselves, I don't need any help. And they have a right to what they're doing with their body, but she could have gone out and gotten hit by a car. Not to mention, trespassing and all the other things, but I was fairly liberal with that because I understood that she was having a rough time and had been having a rough time for many months, if not many years. So the Shoreline Police said that she had done that same thing 6 times that day. She had gone onto people's property, and I thought, wow. And we would still see her walking around. I always think of that one lady, and you multiply that times hundreds and thousands, if not across the country. And nobody has an answer for that, but that is what's really struck me after living here for over 40 years in this same house. That is happening not even in just downtown Seattle. It's happening everywhere. It's just you see it more readily. And I think the Shoreline Police Department has this program, I can't think of what it's called, where they have a behavioralist accompany them to de-escalate situations where they may.
Radar.
What is it? Radar?
Radar.
Yes, that's what it's called. Yeah. I got to witness that in action the next morning after we had the radar. Officers come into one of our meetings for the neighborhood, and the next morning there was a gentleman who was asleep in a running car, and the police had to come and identify who he was. And as we watched from a distance after having called it in, they ended up having to handcuff him, but they spent quite a bit of time talking to him. And they had the woman who was the behaviorist, I don't know if that was her exact title, but she was there to kind of de-escalate anything that was going on. But I think there was also a language barrier. But man, things can go bad very quickly. And the Shoreline Police, they seem to handle it pretty well that I witnessed in that situation. So they need as much support as possible. The police departments and the representatives, the legislature, you people that are out there, it's so nice to be able to just vent. And I think that maybe many of our neighbors have similar stories.
Well, thanks, Marla, so much for sharing that. And I really just want to thank you and acknowledge one thing that was very clear in you talking about that woman was your compassion for her. And I just want to honor how unique that is. I think it's very easy and understandable why somebody might react very differently than the way that you did, and being able to see that that might be her worst day or among her worst. And I just appreciate you holding that compassion for her, even whilst you have a stranger in your yard or on your front porch. I think is really significant. I will just say that that population that you're speaking of, is a hugely important population that needs to be addressed at the city and regional, but also at the state level. We are doing work. I mean, so the issue around a person's kind of civil liberties when a person is in fact in danger of harming themselves or others, or in the case that you described, actually harming property, which is also one of the criteria for civil commitment. We did pass legislation a couple of years ago that would actually expand the state's civil commitment criteria for mental health and substance use disorders, because in my personal opinion, it's sky high and too high currently, and it would expand that. But the contending issue is that we do not have enough psychiatric beds, and so there was a reluctance to open the spigot, so to speak, further when we still have people in emergency departments for weeks at a time, boarding, as they call it, stuck to a gurney because there are no psychiatric beds. And so we are at this harried pace trying to build up psychiatric beds to try to serve this population. And so that's the tension. Actually the expansion of the civil commitment criteria doesn't actually go into effect until we have more sufficient psychiatric bed capacity than we currently have, which is not a perfect solution. But I just want to hold hope that we are working on it, and she is not a lost cause, and individuals like her, there really are interventions that are effective. It's just been so under-resourced. I also think Patrick and Claudia, did you guys have your Zoom hand up earlier?
I did. And Jesse, I really am happy that you came tonight. I really appreciate seeing you, knowing who is working for me in Olympia. And to see you. But what struck me when Jesse talked about a bill becoming a law or an idea becoming a law, when I take the bus down I-5, I have this peculiar, I count the porta potties along the Sound Transit, and I bet there are 50, 100. I bet there are 100 of them out there. And I wondered how did a law get passed that said that so many workers, we have to have a restroom? I mean, who pushed that, and how did that work? They're not doing it out of the Sound Transit is not in the restroom business. I'll tell you, they're doing everything to fight one at the Northgate, even though they have one, and at Echo Lake, where at the transit center, where we got 1,000. Well, they're less now. There easily were 1,000 people a day using that 24 hours a day. There is no restroom. And 2 weeks ago, I've been talking to I've been wondering who are my friends on this? Who can I talk to? And I talked to the county, and but a week ago, a restroom appeared in the parking lot. And I said, well, this is fun. I've been talking to people about this for years. And I went up, and it was locked, and it was locked the next day, and locked the next day. And then I realized that there's a resurfacing going on. There's some oil cracking going through the pavement. And so they're taking out the pavement, putting in the pavement in the parts of the transit center. And I'm sure that restroom is for those additional workers. I'm sure that's why it's there. But can you see my point that what makes a worker special when we all have identical human needs? We all need those restrooms. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. To answer your first question of who passed the law to require restrooms for workers, I have no idea, not a clue. I mean, I'm sure it's been there for 40 years. I don't know. When I was on the city council, we debated at our light rail stations whether we were going to include restrooms in the design that we asked for from Sound Transit. And I got to be honest with you, I don't remember if it was a yes or a no. I remember the debate. The reasons for it are obvious. People need to use the bathroom. But then, the downside is just what we were talking about with Echo Lake Park, just what we were talking about with crime and drug use. Does that become a magnet at night, et cetera? I'm sure you could lock it at night. but those were the factors. And I like I said, I honestly can't remember. This was years ago whether we said yay or nay. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
I think for the workers, because they have to be there for quite a while, it is probably a requirement that we have those sanitary facilities for the workers. For the transit riders, yes, definitely nice to have, especially as I'm getting older and I'm always keeping an eye out for where's the next bathroom. It is a challenge, and especially during a pandemic, when I would drive down to Olympia and I knew exactly which McDonald's or which when I needed the coffee and when I needed the bathroom, and then of course all of a sudden they all became not available. The challenge is for the public restrooms, for instance, the WashDOT restrooms north of Everett. Several of them are going to be shut down because of vandalism, as well as lack of workers, WashDOT workers that can, Department of Transportation workers that needed to staff it to empty out the garbage cans and so on. And so they decided to just shut them down. So if you're going to be driving between Everett and the Canadian border anytime soon, just be prepared as to where you're gonna be making those pit stops. And talking about WashDOT, as you have heard, there are challenges in hiring enough people to work those ferries and drive the transit buses, and even community transit, as the downtown commuter route is going to be, I guess, supplanted by the light rail in about 3-4 years. They are planning on how they can redeploy their buses to extend the existing network into, for instance, from the transit center as they come across the Snohomish County line to the area next to Home Depot, how they can reach down into 185th and the light rail station, so that people can literally have the option of taking the same bus all the way downtown, or they could actually connect at the light rail station of their choice. And I think the benefit of that will be for King County residents. If we wanted to travel into Snohomish County, you'll have another bus route going kind of east-west a little bit and then north into South Snohomish County. So those are the planning that a community transit and of course Metro are doing as those spines get built out and the stations come in. And they are also, community transit, when I met with them this morning, they are also having the same challenges of having enough CDL, commercial driver license people as drivers, just like the school districts that you heard about having to cancel bus routes. They are having exactly the same issues, and apparently they do, as a bonus or a hiring incentive, they do help out with that $7,000 or so that it takes to get that CDL license. And so if you have young people who are looking for really well-paying jobs, have them look toward transit services, CT or Metro, and also the ferry system. They don't necessarily require a college degree, and if they have really good driving records and if they like working with people, those are really well-paying jobs with retirement and other benefits.
Great. I know when Pat, getting back to what Pat was talking about, Pat is we kind of made him our steward of our Echo Lake Park, because we had concerns about the new Portland Loo that was installed there and just what was going on. That transit center there at Aurora Village is definitely an interesting place. And I know Pat has talked to managers from one end to the other about conditions there. And I have too, just the state of what it looks like. And I think, well, and even some of the levels of management that Pat has talked to, who kind of have a stereotype of what the clientele is at that particular transit center. And then I look up Metro's website about how they're trying to improve their transit centers, and they show all these pretty pictures, but Aurora Village doesn't look anything like that. And so I emailed Metro customer service and I said, what are you doing to encourage people to use those transit services there when the light rail station opens? There's sometimes when you go by there, it's so well used, and the people that are working there cleaning it can't keep up, or they don't have enough staff or whatever reason. But I think some of the people at Metro need to open their eyes a little bit more, because some light rail stations need a little bit more love than others. And I don't know that they're going to get that many users at that at the particular station at Aurora Village, because it's garbage strewn everywhere. And I don't know that many would want to get on a bus and stand in that kind of a situation. Yeah. You want to say anything else, Pat, before we close it up?
Lauren, I thought of my representative.
Yeah.
I think a place to use a restroom, a place to defecate and urinate, to everyone is in private, is a kind of a basic, not only a right, it's a health necessity with so many people. And Lauren, I have met, and I get upset about it, I have met people mentally ill and with serious drug problems and other, aging, I saw, and just challenges that we have dealing with life. But one of them that would be made a whole lot easier, that affects every single class, is a restroom. And that's to me, it is a basic mental health, basic physical health. And that's kind of what I wanted to say. And I don't know why everybody doesn't see it the way I do, but that's the way I just feel that's a necessity for health.
I say that every day. I don't know why people don't see it the way I do.
I remember one tall black man on Sunday morning, it was locked. He says, I'm not going to soil myself. He was yelling at me. And what I want to say, it's thank you. Our schools have restrooms. There's something wrong when the Aurora Village Transit Center refuses to admit that they need to provide their customers. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. I think you're being our steward for that particular, for the rest of the neighborhood, for the homeless, and what you're seeing when you're down there almost every day and every morning. Not only the report on the birds that are landing and pooping in the Echo Lake, or who's camping there and maybe have done some tagging and some damage to the Portland Loo. By the way, the Portland Loo has the label of being the most vandalized Portland Loo of any Portland Loo that's ever been sold. I think that's what Dan Johnson told us from the Parks Department, even in Seattle, but that was a year ago, so things can change. All right, well,
I heard it was the most used, the most flushed,
used. Okay, maybe that's better.
The vandalism, he has worked a lot, and it's not broken into anymore. It was, it's not, there's not a lot of graffiti. I've talked to some of the graffiti artists, and it's not plugged up near as much. It's on the upswing.
Oh, good.
We had the gentleman on food truck night that decided to start a little fire in the back of the park too. So we had to call. Pardon?
In the woods, the fire wasn't.
Yeah,
the fire wasn't in the
fire and police and little things like that.
Yeah, and it turned out he just wanted somebody to talk to. One of our staff, the city staff, went there. Cameron Reed, I remember, he walked over, and he was one of the environmental educators that was there at food truck night, and he just went over there and just kind of chatted with the guy. And the guy told him, I just want somebody to talk to. I'm lonely. And he started the fire there, I think I'm assuming because he wanted maybe to get some attention, because we were kind of ignoring him. I felt kind of like maybe we should have invited him to come over to buy him a hamburger or something.
There's
always a lesson there somewhere, right?
I guess, tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from you, and you're not the only one, is with this homeless crisis, you have both compassion and anxiety. And I think that's fair, right? You want to help folks, but you don't want them crashing into your backyard and throwing things off your balcony. I agree. So, I think we need two approaches, but it's sort of a two sides of the coin approach, both what Rep Davis was talking about. And I'll say, in Shoreline, in your neighborhood, and every good idea has multiple parents, but with respect to that, I think it's about 100 units of housing right off Aurora for very low income folks. I think you know what I'm talking about there. And I hope you support it. I came to the council meeting thinking about this, and so did several other members. And at the same time, we all had the same idea of like, why don't we sell this property, lease this property for $1, this leftover property from Aurora development for this kind of housing. And so we did that, and now it's becoming reality. We need those things, but we also need to say, look, if there are these services available, you can't just live wherever you want, however you want, with no rules. When we all are here, all living under a certain set of rules, that's not fair to us, right? So we need a balanced approach, and that's what I think. That's what I think I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, and the other big theme I've heard tonight is just human dignity. You talk about it in the form of restrooms, but it's absolutely correct. When you're able to engage an individual, whether they're living with mental health challenges or substance use disorder or significant trauma, the way that you engage an individual is you treat them with kindness. And if they're cold, you give them a blanket. If you treat them like a human being, and you still see light in them, and you still see hope in them, and you give them a place to use the restroom, and you give them a hot cup of coffee, and ask them their name and ask them their story, and that's how you engage these individuals in services. And I think I just really appreciate the discussion tonight, and that can be as simple as making sure people have a place to use the restroom in some cases. So thank you for that.
Great, yeah. Well, great comments, everybody. Yeah. What a wonderful evening we've had. Anybody have any other questions at all or comments?
Looks like Anne has a hand up.
Michelle, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was just wondering, I live right next door to Echo Lake Park, and I've talked to the police multiple times about various mentally ill folks and drug addicted people and people who are camping there. And it sounds to me like the police get pretty frustrated that now we have the way they were explaining it was that a lot of the homeless folks have gotten kind of savvy to the Ninth Circuit law that said that a municipality can't close all public spaces to people who want to camp. And so the people will come into camp in Echo Lake Park. And I think that places like Echo Lake Park that are surrounded by the transit center and Aurora Avenue and the bike path, maybe we get more than our share of this kind of urban problem. And the police have said they'll explain to people, well, you can't camp here. And then the campers will say, well, yes, I can because of that law. And they cite the law, which says if there's not a shelter bed to be offered, that you can't deny somebody a place to camp. But I believe that the law says that a municipality can't close all public spaces. You have to allow campers in some public spaces, but not all public spaces. And so I wonder if places like Shoreline or other parks that seem to have become sort of a magnet for encampments, which then brings in a lot of people with mental illness and drug addiction and crime. If some of those, it feels to me like a magnet park, if some of those could be closed. It seems to me that law says the police could say, yes, you have every right to camp somewhere, but not in this park. You need to move on so that these places that have become magnets can be safe for people who want to go there. Places like Echo Lake Park don't have wooded areas where people who are homeless or mentally ill can go and find a place and that's secluded. Echo Lake it's very small. There is really no real secluded area. And so we're all just right on top of each other. The people who are trying to fish, the people who are trying to take their little kids to the tiny beach, the people who are camping, they're all squished in there together. So that's what I'm just asking, is if somebody could, and I don't know if that's you guys or just the city of Shoreline government, if somebody could look at the regulation and say, yes, we are allowed to say some areas are off limits to campers, even if we don't have a bed. We want to offer them services. We want them to have a bed, but if we don't have one to offer, it is okay to say, you know, you have to keep moving on. Do you know if that's something that's in your jurisdiction at all, or?
Let me phone an attorney, Senator Solomon.
Yeah, sure.
Senator Solomon is a resident attorney.
I don't want to jump in
Yeah,
too often. You know, the way you describe it would be, it sounds like a local, like each city, each jurisdiction locally would have to decide what they open up, what they don't.
Okay.
This city has, when I was on the council, provided spaces, well, has permitted spaces for tent cities, kind of organized tent cities, when churches or houses of worship asked for it to be on their parking lots, things like
Right.
that. I honestly don't know how the neighbors felt about it, but we thought that was, you know, at least it was organized, and there were rules around drugs and things like that. So maybe that would be the basis for you to then say, no, you can't camp in parks because you can be here. Yeah, I don't know that each local jurisdiction has to provide those services. They could maybe combine with other nearby jurisdictions. We also have what we call the long decision. It wasn't actually a lengthy decision. It was the name of the person was long. It was 4 letters, LONG. You get my point. Which says, you know, the RVs can't be taken by the city if they're illegally parked and sold without some kind of analysis of whether the person who lives in the RV can pay the fines before they're sold, right? So you have to set the fines at a level they can actually pay it. You can't just say it's $500 a day. You have to ask them, you know, how much do you make, you know, and so on and so forth. So that effectively, I think, killed Seattle's and what little enforcement they were doing on that for a while, but they have found some approaches around sanitation. So if there's a public health hazard around particular RVs, they can do some enforcement on that. But from the perspective that you're talking about, it's these court decisions are not making it easy, right? And so that is a little bit out of our hands.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, at least we're
Yeah.
getting the comments out there. I mean, I don't have answers right now,
Right.
but we're getting the feelings and our emotions and facts and unknown answers, you know, unknown questions going on. I don't know if any of the legislators have any more final closing comments, because it's a little bit after 9 o'clock. I know you shared your contact information that people can reach, and Diane Hetrick and the Echo Lake Neighborhood Association will probably make sure that all your contact information goes out to all of the members. And they're not really members, they're neighbors here. Don't have to be a paying member to be in the association. That all people that weren't able to join us at the meeting tonight, that they'll have that information too. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for the time and the dialogue. And we hope to continue the conversation in whatever form, meetings, emails, etc. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, great. Thanks for representing us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and just we'll close the meeting. I have a couple of announcements to make about some things coming up in our neighborhood, and then we'll go ahead and close the meeting and have some time for public comment, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes for that. So make sure that everybody knows that there's a work party going on at Densmore Pathway on October 23rd from 10 to 1 p.m. Echo Lake Elementary PTA, Parents and Teachers Association, is going to have their trunk or treat event on Halloween down at the Greek Orthodox Church parking lot across the street from the school on October 31st during the day, and then during the morning, or actually it's from 1 to 3. So you can still get back home and have time for the little goblins to come to your own house. And don't forget to vote. The deadline is November 2nd, and you should be getting your ballots in the mail if you haven't already. And our next ELNA meeting will be next month on Tuesday, November 16th. And I think the topic will be about the businesses here in Shoreline. Does anyone have any other public comments they want to make before we close the meeting? I don't think we had anybody that had contacted us about anything else. So go ahead and say goodnight to everyone. And I think this was a pretty good meeting. We had about 20 to 30 people attend. I was trying to keep pushing the button on my iPad to see how many people we had in attending tonight. So thank you very much and have a good evening. Good night.